Hello, everyone. This is Larry Tippin, County Historian. We've been doing a series on the tiny towns and vanished villages of Putnam County. And today we want to talk about Fillmore, or the greater Fillmore area, and the predecessor communities of Fillmore. Fillmore itself was platted February 20th, 1851 by James Bowman and Samuel Catterling, as noted on page 126 of Plat Book number 1 in the Putnam County Reporter's Office, the Plat Books. Although some of the early histories say it was Benjamin Nicholson, James Sill, and Leonard C. Catterling, believed to be named after recently inaugurated President Millard Fillmore. But some wanted the place to be called Darwin or Delmar. I'm not sure where the Darwin name come from because Darwin's Origin of Species was not published until 1859, almost 10 years later, or where the Delmar name came from. Let's look at the 1879 Atlas map of Putnam County. We see Fillmore. That's along the Terre Haute Richmond Railroad, which later became Vandalia, and then the Pennsylvania. And up here we see that in 1870 the Big Four Railroad came through less than a mile north of Fillmore. Now it's more or less on the north edge of Fillmore, but we see up here in 1879 north of Fillmore a Darwin flag station. Apparently there might have been a compromise or something where they went ahead and used the Darwin name that some wanted to use. And a flag station basically is if someone, it's not a regular stop, regular scheduled stop on a railroad, but if someone wants to get off, they can tell the conductor that they want to get off, or if somebody wants to get on, they can actually literally flag the train down. That's what a flag station is. And then we see in the railroad maps, 1895, 1901, we see Fillmore, again on the Vandalia, Pennsylvania line, both these maps. And then on the north of Fillmore, on the Big Four, we see Delmar, both of those maps. That's kind of interesting. So we have the Darwin flag station, also known as Delmar, which may have been, again, a compromise for those two names. But before there was Fillmore, there was Eberly. Eberly was about 2 miles north of Fillmore in Floyd Township, section 33, platted July 8, 1845 by Williams Matthews. You see on the map, it's an 1864 map, courtesy of the Library of Congress. You see up here in Floyd Township, and then down in Marion Township was Fillmore, north of Fillmore. On Plat Book 2, page 34, the east part of the east half of the northwest quarter of section 33 of Floyd Township was plotted out as Delmar, which is on Matthews land. You can see maybe Dr. Robinson, James Robinson, one of the early doctors community, may have been one of the only people living in Eberly at the time. Also want to note too, down here we have Reuben Reagan, one of the first, or the first settler, in Marion Township. That'd be kind of interesting to talk about Reuben Reagan, one of the first settlers in the county, and first settler in Marion Township. He was born in Virginia, 1793. When young, his family moved to Kentucky, where his parents died. According to various historical records, Reuben then spent the winter of 1816 in Vincennes, Indiana, and then the winter of 1818 and 1819 in the home of Joseph Thomas, which was below Webster's Mill. Washington Township, Putnam County. Reuben Reagan, Joseph Thomas, and others helped erect the home of James Athey, believed to be the first permanent structure in Putnam County. And then he often lodged with the natives who were there before us near Greencastle, or generally in Putnam County, central Putnam County area. Now the Indians then, or the natives, didn't have what we call the teepees. They had lodges built out of sticks and wood and so forth was their home. Then he went back to Kentucky, and then he got some scions or grafts of trees, fruit trees, to plant Putnam County. He said that he planted some west of Greencastle and then north. Then he settled north of Fillmore in 1822, married Jane Matthews in 1828, who was a sister of William Matthews, who had planted Eberly. Reuben Reagan served in the state legislature in the 1860s, was also mayor of Greencastle, 1859 and 1860. This is Reuben Reagan and his wife Jane. Very nice, high quality photos. Very nice that we have these. All right, this is a very interesting little essay written by William Reagan, son of Reuben Reagan, talking about the first horticultural society published for the Horticultural Society in 1906. Then he wrote in his essay, in August of 1840, his parents, well mounted, with the saddlebags full, to the utmost capacity, went to the big city. When they returned, they had many things to talk about, saying they had attended the first meeting of the Indiana Horticultural Society, the founding meeting, and helped organize the society and display the fruit that they had carried with them in saddlebags at the exhibition that was held in the hall of the new State House in Indianapolis. The meeting was held 22nd day of August, 1840, continuing. I cut bits and pieces, a very long article. And then William said he did not think his parents attended the second annual meeting, but they did the one in 1842, which had a much larger attendance. And it was noted because of an exhibition of fruits and so forth. And the prize was a set of silver spoons for the best seedling apple, which his parents won that prize. The spoons were yet in the family, 2 he had had, and then the other 4 probably other family members. Needless to say, highly prized, interesting, valuable souvenirs, early horticulture of the state of Indiana and certainly Putnam County. If anybody knows of these spoons, we would certainly like to at least see those if they're still in the family. Continuing. The immediate credit organization of Indiana Pomological Society, that specifically means scientific study and cultivation of fruit, not just horticulture in general, but fruit specifically. At the Indiana State Fair was held in October of 1860. Notwithstanding a small number, an organization was affected. Reuben Reagan was chosen president. So we see the strong horticultural ties of the early founding pioneer in the Fillmore area, Reuben Reagan. And this was the home, still standing, we believe, first built about 1824, possibly 1823, with the original rooms, which were a log cabin type structure. And you can see the home has been added to since then. This particular photo, courtesy of Putnam County Public Library collections, was taken in August of 1899, shows several members of Reuben Reagan's family descendants, including his son, Robert Milton Reagan, who owned the home at that time, noticed that a nephew, Robert Nicholson, had rode over on his bicycle, and they're playing croquet that day, apparently, having a fun, probably Sunday afternoon. So let's talk about Nicholsonville. Nicholsonville, then, was 1 mile east of Fillmore, probably named after Benjamin Nicholson, platted September 28, 1837, by James Allen. Abijah Robinson had a store there and a post office. Okay, let's go back to 1879. This is kind of busy, but I'm going to show you several things. We have Darwin Flag Station again, this same map we looked at earlier. Also notice that Jane Reagan has the land up here, and this is her children. She's deeded off parts of it so they can have their homes. Reuben Reagan died in 1865. Then Jane lived 30 more years. She didn't die until 1895. So of 1879, Jane had that. We see Darwin's Flag Station again, and Fillmore. And over here, we see this large collection of homes, which is Nicholsonville. And one of the interesting things, they show a cemetery here. Notice the difference between the cemetery. This is the Fillmore Cemetery with a cross and a box, meaning it's a large cemetery. And then one without a box means it's a small cemetery. And the only a few graves, or one of the prominent ones, is Benjamin Mahoney. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologize if I'm not. 1760 to 1854, who served in the Revolutionary War. Commonly refer to this cemetery as Smythe Netzer or Smith Netzer. I think it's very interesting. The railroad that we saw went through in 1852. Now remember that Nicholsonville was platted 5 years prior to that. It was platted before the railroads came through. But the Tarrant and Richmond Railroad, which came to Vandalia, and then later the Pennsylvania, came through in 1852. This is an advertisement, 1859, showing the stops on the railroad related to Greencastle Station, eastbound, westbound, saying the second train, east and west, stopped at every stop. But they're saying the first train east stops at Brazil, Greencastle Junction, which became Limedale, Greencastle, Cartersburg, then going the other way, Staunton, Brazil, or the third stop, going that way, Staunton, Brazil, Reals Junction, which is Reelsville, Greencastle, or Reelsville, Greencastle Junction, which is Limesdale, Greencastle, Nicholsonville. And then going the other way, you have Cartersburg, Clayton, Coatesville, Nicholsonville, Limedale, Reelsville, so forth, so on. So I think it's very interesting to see this schedule of stops, but there's no stop noted in the new town of Fillmore. So Nicholsonville was the big town at the time before Fillmore really took off. And we notice a notice from the postmaster at Nicholsonville saying that the postage has basically been increased and so forth. Just very interesting, this postmaster at Nicholsonville. Let's talk about the post offices then and the progression. The first post office for the community started out Eberly, William Matthews, for just a year and a half. And then it moved to Nicholsonville with the appointment of B.J. Robinson, postmaster. And then, well, at Nicholsonville, they had a few more postmasters. And then it was moved to Fillmore, but still called Nicholsonville Post Office in the town of Fillmore for just a few more years. And then it became known as the Fillmore Post Office. Now we can see that in a publication called Postmasters 1832 to 1971, which basically is a handwritten ledger maintained by the Post Office Department of the post offices and the appointment of the postmasters. So we see Eberly, William Matthews, transferred to Nicholsonville, late Eberly, and then Fillmore, late Nicholsonville. So we see that the post office was Waverly, then Nicholsonville, and then Fillmore. So that's the progression of those three communities. Also, in addition to that, we have again this 1879 map. Waverly, of course, is north of here. You see Nicholsonville, Fillmore, Garden Flag Station. Not named at this water tank is Malta. Separate community, had its own post office. Mail was never transferred from any of the other three to Malta, but it was a post office after the Big Four came through in 1870. Actually started in 1872 for just a few years. And we see in that appointment of postmasters, model post office, and then it just said it was discontinued. So it wasn't transferred to another post office. It just started, and then 4 years later it stopped. And this is a really cool picture. This is in the collection of the Putnam County Museum, the Malta coal dump. In the map that we saw, you notice a water tower. Well, that's the water tower that's on that map. And then you see this coal dump, a very massive structure where the trains would come under and put the coal in the car. So it went from wood burning to coal burning at this point in time. Very neat photo. And then also, one of the noted early residents of Malta was Professor Redpath of Indiana Asbury, later DePaul. Professor Redpath wrote the history of Putnam County for the 1879 Atlas and History, but he did not write the history of the townships, but he did write the history of the county. So he's probably the most noted resident from the Malta area. And we got some really neat newspaper articles to share with you. This is from 1895, Greencastle Star Press. It says Malta, news from Malta. We get some of these newspaper articles from the Hoosier State Chronicles. You can go to the Hoosier State Chronicles, use your search engine, whatever you use, type it in. And then you can type in then Malta. You get a number of newspaper articles in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So Malta is visited by the grip. And then they're having some parties and so forth. They'll celebrate President Washington's birthday. And then the correspondent from Malta is nobody's girl. Apparently some sort of feminist or whatever, but good for her. Nobody's girl. And then we see, again, 1896, Greencastle Star Press, news from Marion Township. And they note Malta, where the school had closed Wednesday, March 25th. Taught by Miss, I don't know, 3 S's, Elmer Robinson, and then so forth and so on, some of the other things. You can pause anytime you want during presentations and read the newspapers if I go too fast. So that's kind of neat to do. And this one's just signed with an X. All right, so that's the interesting progression of Fillmore and the communities that came Fillmore. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll come back and we're going to do some more tiny towns, Venice villages.